climate tech is probably on the top of the list. But at the same time, which technology has the most difficulty to develop, to validate, and also to commercialize? Climate tech is probably also on the top of the list. And that's one of the reasons we decided to start this series of panel discussion, and we named it Fusion Talks. Taiwan, among many other countries, is pledged to reach net zero by 2050. But to make it happen, we need not only the practical policies to set aggressive goals, we also need to raise awareness of general public to adjust their lifestyles. But most importantly, we do need to have a technology breakthrough, the innovations that can fundamentally change and solve the climate change puzzles. So this will be the first of many future sessions of Fusion Talk to come. We try to use this forum to tackle the hard issues of climate change. We need technology, we need financial resource, we also need talents. And I'm glad that in the session today, we are able to invite one venture capitalist. And originally, we have started a CEO. Unfortunately, as a CEO, there are lots of uncertainties and other demands in their busy life. So Shashank will not be able to join today. And we also are very happy to have Alex Penn, the Executive Vice President of E3, to join the session. And thankfully, we have Larry to lead the panel. Larry is the founder of MIH ESG Fund. He has been an active investor and executive in impact field for over a decade. So without further ado, let me pass the baton to Larry. Larry, all yours.
Thank you, CK. Thank you, Be Current Impact Investment, as well as Green Impact Academy and Taiwan Venture Capital Association for organizing this event. And thank you for having me as your moderator for today's discussion. My name is Lawrence Yan, and I am a venture capitalist, a two-time startup entrepreneur, and now focusing on investing and helping grow new climate and sustainable related innovation and technologies. I was born in Taipei, raised and educated in Canada, and I hope to be a part of the solution to the world's climate crisis from the business perspective, joining the East and the West. Now, make no mistake, the climate crisis is a global problem. The nature does not acknowledge sovereignty or borders. It is a problem the world needs to tackle collectively as a whole. And this is why it is so important for us from Taiwan to understand what our friends from around the world are trying to accomplish to solve our climate problems and how Taiwan may become a positive factor in the equation. In the 1990s, Taiwan was a critical player in the global advancement in computer technologies. Now, in 2020, Taiwan can play just as critical a role in the global advancement in climate technology. We certainly have the capacity and capability to contribute. As CK has mentioned, unfortunately, one of the panelists we invited needed to attend to some of his startup emergencies. So Shashank Samala of Heirloom is unable to join us at the last minute. So we'll just have to ask Shuo and Dr. Peng to put in a bit more work today for us. Thank you. But before that, let me quickly introduce Shashank first for some of you who are anticipating Shashank to join us today. Just a very quick introduction to what he does on his behalf. Shashank is the CEO of Heirloom. Now, Heirloom is one of the most promising direct air capture technology companies from Silicon Valley. They recently received investment from Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy and Chris Sacca's Lower Carbon Capital. Shashank is an engineer and purist, also a serial entrepreneur. He was previously a founder at Temple Automation. Shashank left Temple to pursue his true purpose in building this technology that can accelerate the planet's transition to a carbon negative society. So his ambition is to remove 1 billion ton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by 2035. So if any of our friends or participants have interest hearing more about Heirloom and what they're working on, please reach out to us, and we'll see if we can arrange another discussion with Shashank down the road. Okay. Now, more importantly, the panelists we have with us today. First, we have Xiao Yang from 50 Years. Quickly about 50 Years. 50 Years slogan is, they back heroes using technology to solve the world's biggest problems. Is that correct? 50 Year focuses on seed investment and is one of the most active deep tech impact investment venture capital in the US. And also today we have Taiwan's very own Dr. Alex Peng. Dr. Peng is the Executive Vice President from eTree's Net Zero and Sustainability Office. eTree has been at the forefront for many, many technology and innovation that Taiwan has developed. And now eTree just created this Net Zero and Sustainability Office to lead Taiwan into a net zero economy. So without further ado, let me invite our guests to give us a quick 3-minute introduction of themselves. So please, Xiao, can you start us off? A quick introduction of yourself, 50 years, and also your investment focus. Thank you, Xiao.
Thank you so much, Larry, and so glad to be here to talk to everyone. So at 50 Years, we kind of divide the world into 3 broad circles, kind of like a Venn diagram, and we're hyper-focused at that intersection. So the first circle for us is what we describe as deep tech. That's supporting founders with either an advanced degree or just a deep, specialized, maybe even esoteric knowledge in a particular area. I get really excited when I talk to a founder and I walk away from the meeting feeling like, oh my God, there's only like 10 people in the entire world that uniquely understand both the problem and the solution. The second circle for us is we're looking for that pathway to $1 billion in annual revenue. And I think that's important because the problems that we're facing, they're global in nature and they're massive in scale. And so by definition, we have to look for products and technologies that can touch millions, if not billions of people all over the world if we were to make a real dent into solving some of these problems. And then the last circle is we want to back founders solving the world's biggest problems. I'm not interested in dog walking apps or how you make smoothies taste better for like rich Silicon Valley assholes. It's almost embarrassing sometimes what other people in the VC industry are still putting their effort and money into. I'd rather partner with founders that are helping make humanity much, much better, how to take our civilization to that next step. So at that intersection, we're solely focused on doing really early stage partnerships. We support founders in the pre-seed and the seed stage with anywhere from $200,000 to $2 million in early stage capital. But it's really not about writing the check. I think for us, because we've all been founders before and we've all built and grown companies, it's really about making that foundation so that we can help our founders gain some of those unfair advantages and hopefully create some of the most impactful and powerful companies in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Xiao. Thank you. Now, Dr. Peng, could you please quickly introduce eTree for us, also the Net Zero and your Sustainability Office?
Yes, let me introduce briefly about the history of eTree. Back to 40 years ago, eTree incubated TSMC, UMC, and then we go to some component, for example, the display, any kind of electronic component and peripherals. And then we move to the machinery, AI machinery. And now I think it's the new stage. We have to transform the local industry. As you know, that the local industry has strongly engaged with global market and global community. So I think this is really a very important and also the critical moment for eTree to help the industry to transform into another stage. I'm very pleased to hear that Shuo said he has a great ambitions to have an early stage kind of raise any kind of fund. I think eTree also have this kind of new ambitions. One is to have some startup. The new startup have to have some creative or innovative way to transform the local industry on the other hand, I think when we put everything together, we should help the local industry and also the global market to reduce the carbon. Our first target is within 10 years to reduce about 30% of solution. And certainly after 2030, 2040, and we need to move to 50 and 100. I think this is a kind of mix of evolution and revolution. I think the ITRI will be very happy to play this role. And my office, I'm very happy to connect the policy and the industry and the technology, and also most importantly, to connect all the people and all the experts all together. I think when we put together, we are hopefully to work all together. I'm very pleased to see our speaker turn up. Yeah, that's my brief introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Peng. Hello, Shashank. It's so wonderful to see you.
Sorry for the delay. I was dealing with an emergency, but I really appreciate your patience.
That's wonderful. So we just got started. Thank you for joining us. We just got into the introduction part of the discussion. So if you could, please share with us a little bit about Heirloom and your personal journey for about 3 minutes or so.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's real pleasure to be here. So, my background, I'm Shashank. I'm the CEO at Heirloom, and my background is, I grew up in Southeast India, and I saw firsthand impacts of climate change on very vulnerable people who had little to do with creating the problem in the first place, I think climate change is something that specifically affects incredibly vulnerable people. So, that's something I always wanted to work on. I got a big break, moved to the US in my early teens, went to good schools, worked at Square, a mobile payments company in the early years. And then I started a company called Tempo, which basically builds electronics for satellites and rockets and autonomous cars and so forth. So, it's a manufacturing automation company. That company is about to go public in a couple of years, in a couple of months. So, now, about 3-4 years ago, I wanted to, see how I can help climate, see how we can get to net zero. And I read the IPCC report in 2018, which talked about, for the first time ever, we can't just reduce emissions and decarbonize, but we have to remove a lot of carbon out of the air. And we need to remove billions of tons of CO2 out of the air. It's not nice to have anymore. So so we're building a carbon removal technology, removing carbon out of the atmosphere, and that's not only going to remove legacy emissions, emissions that we already put in the atmosphere for the last couple hundred years, but also help us decarbonize industries like manufacturing, steel production, concrete production, aluminum, agriculture, aviation, shipping. These are all industries that are hard to decarbonize and will be slow. So in order to complement those efforts, we need to remove carbon to decarbonize those industries. So that's what Heirloom is about. We've raised about $60 million so far from Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is backed by Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and from Lower Carbon Capital, backed by Chrisaka and many other VCs. We're about 40 people based in San Francisco. Super exciting to be here. We're building technology that basically uses minerals that have a propensity to capture CO2 out of the air. These minerals, like limestone, are kind of slow to remove CO2 out of the air. So we give them more superpowers to have them accelerate and take more CO2 much faster. So our first deployment is going to be early next year. And so that's a slight intro.
Thank you, Shashank. So good to have you here with us. Okay, so going on to part two of our discussion. From your experiences, let me start with Shuo. because Shuo has probably looked at a lot of different technologies in climate technology. So what are a couple of technologies that you find extremely interesting, that is scalable, that could be commercialized, may have a lot of opportunities in the future? Could you please share with us?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lawrence. Me in particular, I love anything in the energy space, right? A lot of what Shashank talks about is 100% true. And when you dig deeper into some of the problems preventing us from decarbonizing faster, a lot of times you get back to this core idea of like, man, if I just had unlimited, sustainable, cheap energy, boy, we could do so much to accelerate the process in which we can help fix the environment. And so anything on the energy value chain, from generation through storage to transmission to even some retail models, I'm super interested about. I guess specifically within that chain, I really love energy storage. I see it as this kind of gatekeeping technology that's really going to blow the whole world open when it comes to sustainable forms of electricity, like solar, like wind. And I think especially in a lot of these really hard to decarbonize industries, industrials and cement, being able to do energy storage and then output both electricity and heat, that's something that can do a lot of wonderful things for the world. And in terms of the challenges, well, I think in energy in a lot of different areas, you're talking about these really ambitious goals. And I sort of see it as you have a big treasure chest on top of a super tall tower. And how do you get to that tower? You got to build a really great ladder. And all the rungs of that ladder have to be spaced apart in just the right way. And for us, we're early stage and we can help some folks, but after companies graduate and they need growth funding and project financing, where are those kind of steps? And the more we can get that infrastructure together, the faster the velocity is. And that means less damage for the earth and saving more money when it comes to future kind of cleanups. And so we have to build this really end-to-end complete ladder where people can support these great teams like Heirloom all the way through up to the point when they're pulling out billions of tons of CO2 from the earth. And that's one of the main problems now that exists for other industries, that needs to exist in a very real way for climate tech as well.
Thanks, Shuo. Just to get into a little bit deeper, is there a particular technology that you like yourself? We're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at nuclear fusion. Is there anything that you particularly focus on or have a favor for?
Me personally?
Yes.
I don't care, and I don't think I'm smart enough to pick winners. And that's honestly one of the reasons I like storage, right? Storage allows me to be an idiot, right? The storage is going to benefit all those great renewable technologies. It's really going to fundamentally change how the entire energy infrastructure works, right?
That's awesome. Thank you. Now, Shashank, moving ahead. Direct air capture is one of the most fascinating technology we have going on right now. Stripe just signed a $925 million deal with the Frontier Fund with a bunch of leading technology companies that could potentially change the trajectory of this particular technology. So what are the things that Heirloom needs to overcome? Your target is to hit 1 billion tons of carbon removal a year by 2035. Could you please share with us? The opportunity is definitely there, but the challenges that you have to overcome and hurdles you have to overcome to make this happen.
Yeah, so the obstacles I would say is threefold. One is technology. We're working on that. We've built a great team. We've raised a lot of capital. It's a great technology approach in general, using naturally available minerals to pull CO2 out of the air. Continuing to de-risk that, making more progress, doing this at a higher and higher scale. I think that's something that I have high confidence that we can solve. The things that we don't have as much in control are the other two. The second one is really carbon removal purchases. Obviously Stripe raised about $1 billion last week to buy carbon removals while they're expensive and to help bring the cost down. That's a great signal. That's exactly what we need, 100x over. We need 100 times that type of capital or even more to be able to fund these technologies while they're still early and bring the cost down. If you don't bring the cost down from where they are today, it won't be a meaningful part of climate. Yeah, it's essentially, it's sort of like, how Germany subsidized solar panels in the early 2000s. that made that helped reduce the cost, increase the scale of solar panels. China started manufacturing those panels and got them to be super affordable and cheap. And the cost continued to come down on those solar panels. So, that type of initial, fire that Germany put in and China helped with, we need something similar in carbon removal, where we need some initial fire, initial subsidy, initial way to invest in these technologies while they're still expensive, buy carbon removals while they're still expensive, and help bring the cost down. So that's the second part. And the third one is the government's role in it, right? The government, whether it's in the US or elsewhere, can create policies to help create markets for carbon removals. For example, there is in California, there is a market called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. It's a cap and trade market where the government puts a cap on emissions, and it allows companies who can't quite reach are over that carbon intensity cap to buy credits, carbon credits from someone else who were able to who have more credits available because they were below that cap. So it's called a cap and trade program. It's a very well-known program. So that's something that we should have not just in California, but rather in the US, in the EU, hopefully in the East as well. So more cap and trade, more policies that allow for for companies to buy carbon removals.
Thank you, Shashank. Especially on the third point, that I think the government really has a critical role in all of this. What are you seeing? Where do you see this coming from? Would it be coming from the U.S. federal government? Would it be coming from the UN? Who's taking responsibility?
And in my opinion, everyone is kind of looking around and seeing who will lead the charge, right? I think someone just needs to step up and lead the charge. EU is definitely making a lot of moves. Right. EU, couple months ago, has made a pledge to buy, I think, some number of millions of tons of carbon removals, and incorporate carbon removals into their net zero commitment, EU in general. I know the United States is considering that. There's a Carbon Removal Leadership Act that just got, it didn't get passed. It got introduced in Congress last week, actually, which is super exciting. There's a lot more countries that need to do that. So, we cannot get to net zero without carbon removals. Right. That's something people need to understand. Like that there is just some hard to abate emissions, the last 20-30% of emissions that are just incredibly hard to abate. As Shuo was saying, the nice thing about renewable energy, low cost renewable energy, is that not only it helps decarbonize, but also helps things like direct air capture, our technology, also thrive. So there's some investments that it's a no-brainer to do. For example, invest in low-cost renewable energy. On top of that, we need investments in carbon removals to get to net zero.
It really has to be a global effort, because if it's a single country effort, then there's always going to be loopholes like taxes. You can always find a tax haven. You can always find a carbon tax haven somehow. So it really has to be a global thing.
Exactly.
Thank you, Shashank. Now, Dr. Peng, so you represent the government for Taiwan. So what kind of opportunities, could you help with Taiwan going to net zero economy efforts? What has ITRI, your office, done and your supporting agencies done in the development of climate technology and innovation? Could you please share some with us?
Yeah, I think ITRI is not government. We are non-portfolio or non-for-profit organization. Well, as I said, we set up the platform between the government, industry, and expert and innovator. So I think the most important at this moment is to build up a scientific pathway systematically for the government and also for the industry. Everybody is panicked at this moment. For example, the branding company, the Nike, Adidas, Apple, every company asks Taiwan to go net zero. So we tend to be the realize everything in Taiwan, right? So I think very important for Taiwan, not just being asked to do so. We should say we can do that before everybody asked. I think this is a very important thing. Another thing is carbon is not a bad thing, not a bad material. Carbon is a good material. How can we utilize, how can we circulate the carbon? I think it's the most important. If we can circulate carbon, then that wouldn't go to the air. We have no emission. I think that's my basic idea to the Taiwan industry. For example, the very simple example we've been doing. For example, we know the cow put up much methane, right? So can we possibly reduce that? One thing is we can, like CK, everybody to be vegetarian. That's one way, right? We are doing similar way to let all the vegetarian to taste good thing. So that good taste should be Taiwan's uniqueness. That's one thing. Another thing is we try to feed the cow to eat lemon, pineapple skin, or pineapple peel. Because after some kind of a fermentation, the cow can reduce up to 20% of methane. As we know, methane is greenhouse. That's a very serious thing. So with this technology, we are working with New Zealand. I think that the farm, I think that is to us, that is a very, a mixture of innovative and a kind of a realization technology. Another thing is, for example, Taiwan produce probably 75% of functional fashion shoes, fashion clothes to the whole market. Maybe I can show you this shoe. Oh, can you see the shoe? Yeah. This shoe is made by one material, just one material. You can circulate the material and recycle the material after certain time, certain years. So then you circulate the whole carbon. I think this is the idea we have been doing. Another limitation of Taiwan is with lack of the natural resources. This is a problem. For example, we import 98% of energy, import almost 98% of the fossil fuel and everything. So if we can circulate this thing within Taiwan, also within the global community, that would be a great contribution to the global climate change. So, for example, as I said, Taiwan has a limitation of land. So we need to innovate a very high efficiency of photovoltaic. That's one way, high efficiency of photovoltaic. How can we turn old unstable renewable energy into stable renewable energy? That is a big challenge, a big hurdle, but also a big opportunity that we've been doing. And also, can we recycle all the wind power, recycle all the photovoltaic? One of our technologies to recycle the whole photovoltaic after 20, 25 years or 30 years. After their end of service life, we can recycle all the material and then send them back into the new photovoltaic. That is recycle the whole valuable material, the whole carbon. I think that would be a good target for a new startup. I welcome both of you to invest our project. This would be a global impact project. I think I have many other examples. If I have a chance, I would like to introduce you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peng. Just to quickly follow up, I'm sure you have met a lot of corporations in Taiwan as well. Now, for Shuo and for Shashank, Taiwan, we are a major manufacturer for a lot of world supply chain. You may know the semiconductors, of course, but like Dr. Peng said, the shoes and the hats and all kinds of stuff. But is our government promoting net zero economy in terms of implementing government policies to enforce some of these companies to go greener. I know a lot of pressure are coming from our customers in the US. The SEC is really cracking down on the Apple supply chain, for example. But do you see any challenges, pushbacks, or opportunities in terms of the corporates in Taiwan? Are they able to abide by these regulations set by the US customers? Are there challenges? What do you see in that front?
Yeah, I think one important thing is we've been asked from the branding company. The company want to realize the net zero carbon, some of them 2030, for example, Apple, yeah? For the shoes and clothes, probably we should reduce 50% of carbon 2030. So the challenge is not go far into 50 years or 2050, it's 2030. So it should put all the company, all the industry into certain kind of an ecosystem. I think ecosystem is very important to our mind. The ecosystem within the vertical industry, the ecosystem on the horizontal industry. If we can put that together, then that is a circulation of carbon. From the government part, I think we just reduced 12 strategic paths. I think that cover a very wide range, the low carbon energy, circular economy, and how can we change the lifestyle, and how can we put some incentive for the whole industry. I think one of the important goals, for example, Taiwan has many scooters. We have probably 20 million of scooters. And one of the company, Google, now goes IPO in US. I think that is one of the very important things. How to put Taiwan into the best practice places. Once that goal to be successful, one that's been proved, it should go global. I think Taiwan, I cannot say our talent, our nature is go global. Once been proved in Taiwan, then go global. I think that we should also have this kind of ambition, like both of you.
Thank you. Now to the third part of our discussion, I want to call this part as Taiwan can help. So first question to Shuo is, from your perspective, like I mentioned, Taiwan is a big part of the global supply chain. What role do you see Taiwan could play in the global pursuit of these world-changing climate and sustainability technologies?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lawrence. I mean, the short answer is Taiwan can do anything it really wants here, right? Previously when you were saying Taiwan is doing all this great stuff in manufacturing, to me, it almost sounds like you're selling Taiwan a little bit short, right? I look at Taiwan and I see highly educated workforce, strong research university systems, progressive policy, high-tech infrastructure, existing leaders in really important industries, strong respect for women, right? You have all the amazing ingredients on this table. And really the only thing left to do is you can take these wonderful ingredients and it's time, to use Dr. Alex Pang's analogy, we can cook a very delicious meal out of the wonderful things that you have within the country. And what specifically that is, though, I think you just need the leadership in the country to have a clear vision. And it's easy to make the comparison to something like Singapore, for example. I think they've done really, really well because they've chosen a really clearly focused way to move forward. They decided to encourage early stage entrepreneurship by matching funding from Silicon Valley and other established VCs. They've chosen strategic areas of focus like cultured meat, next generation chemicals, and decarbonization. And they back up this vision with a really strong commitment from the capital side of things, right? Temasek and BlackRock are doing this decarbonization partners funds. They're actively investing into creating new infrastructure. All that stuff combines together for a really, really strong thrust. And I think Taiwan can take this playbook and you pair it with a strong domestic policy that learns from forward-thinking countries like Norway or France that's banning non-renewable, jet fuel, for example. And then I can see Taiwan turning into this amazing place where technologies in climate tech go to graduate from being just pilots into commercial ready, game-changing companies. And I think if you really do this, it transforms Taiwan into an Eden and it creates that kind of fuel for like economic prosperity. You know, like Taiwan has already contributed so much to the world, right? You know, you guys invented ramen, the floating gate transistor. I'm pretty sure Taiwanese people invented the N95 mask too, which is everywhere now because of COVID, right? And so could be a great moment for Taiwan to take that role that I know Taiwan can on the world stage and do something super, super wonderful.
Oh. Thank you.
That's awesome. We can make you our ambassador for that.
Sold.
You should come to Taiwan and eat.
Done. I'm there. Just give me free milk tea.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thanks, Xiao. Thank you. Now, Shashank, you know, right now the entire carbon capture, the DAC industry, it is still partially limited to the US and Europe. I think Asia is a little bit behind this entire movement. What role do you see Taiwan, you know, what role can you play to help either Heirloom or climate tech or sustainability tech or direct air capture? What can we do to be a part of this?
It's a very loaded question, but I will keep it very simple, and I will tell you exactly what I told a very similar question I got from the US government last week. So there's this idea in the US government right now around a direct air capture hub, a DAC hub. And the idea is that the US Department of Energy specifically would create 4 hubs across the US. And those hubs will have geological storage of CO2, renewable energy access, and all the other surrounding infrastructure for DAC companies like us to come in, plug in, capture CO2 out of the air, and be ready to go. So sort of like a plug and play type of idea where, you know, the Department of Energy would invest the infrastructure, right? The infrastructure being renewable energy, geological CO2 carbon dioxide storage, and another ancillary equipment for DAC companies like us to come in and just like plug a wire in, plug a pipe in here, and then start capturing CO2. So, you know, making it super easy for us, like, you know, don't have to think about permitting, don't have to think about, you know, where to source the energy, that type of thing. It's super easy, just invest the because they take care of the infrastructure for DAC. The second thing we talked about was the US government buying carbon removals, procuring carbon removals, partly because the government has, you know, a large percentage of the United States' emission footprint. A lot of that is actually driven by the government. You know, 40–50% of the GDP is actually driven by the US government. So a lot of the emissions come from the US government, like with the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, all the initiatives that the US government partakes in. So, you know, and so, you know, essentially they would, the second thing is basically they would buy 10-year, they would write 10 to 20-year contracts to buy carbon removals, just like buying renewable energy capacity. When you're putting in a solar panel, for example, you sign something called a power purchasing agreement, PPA, you probably heard of. We're trying to take that concept and bring that over to DAC, direct air capture. Instead of a power purchasing agreement, you have a carbon purchasing agreement, CPAs. So the US government would buy some removals to help bring the cost down. So those are the two things, you know, I mentioned there, and I think it's a similar thing here as well. You know, I think if you want to be a leader in direct air capture, and right now there is no leader, there is someone, you know, someone can grab that title to be a leader in direct air capture. And so US is definitely investing a lot in there. So I would be surprised if someone else caught up, but if Taiwan can, you know, that would be a pleasant surprise.
Hopefully. Just to follow on a little bit, in terms of commercialization of DAC, where do you see the biggest, in terms of technology and the setup, do you see the biggest hurdle or the bottleneck to be in the hardware, in the yield rate of the capture, in the sciences, in the chemistry, or in the physics?
Where is the bottleneck right now?
Yeah, for the cost to come down.
Oh, sure. It's really two things. One is, fundamentally there is design and chemical conversion ratio efficiencies in any technology. Just think about the Teslas the last 15 years, right? Not only did they bring down the cost of batteries, they also improved the efficiency of those batteries. Like each battery, each kilowatt hour was able to drive longer. So that's, so what matters is cost per performance ratio. Not just cost, but rather cost per performance. So you can increase performance and still drop your cost per performance ratio. And same thing here, the cost reductions will come from two things. One is design improvements and chemical conversion improvements, and building factories, increasing economies of scale, buying more of the same thing, right? So just in general, the scale up of the manufacturing of these facilities will naturally create a learning curve, a cost reduction. So you'll have both. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Now, Dr. Peng, in terms of where Taiwan can help, what are some of the major projects that eTree will undertake in 2022 specifically, projects will roll out domestically or internationally, and that will put Taiwan on the path to reach our goal of net zero going forward?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I think Taiwan cannot do it alone, as I said. I think we have several projects. One is as you know, low cost is Taiwan's very unique specialty, low cost. Now we should go to the low carbon and low cost. With this kind of pathway, we do need a lot of innovation. So we are working on four sectors. The first sector is the low carbon energy. As I said, we need to turn the unstable renewable energy, including wind, including the PV, including later on would be geothermal, and the ocean wave. How can we turn everything unstable and make them to be a stable one? So that hub, I think, would be very unique. And not just doing this, we need to recycle all these renewable energy parts. As I said, the wind, PV, if we can do that, that would be great achievement and also would have a great impact to the global community. And second thing I would say is circular economy for the manufacturing side. As we've been doing a lot of manufacturing for shoes, for example, TSMC, for chip, for notebook, for everything. So if we can circulate this material and send them back into the original part, that would be a huge circulation for the whole market, for the whole world. I think this need a lot of a good business model, and Taiwan is not that good at business model. I think if we can combine the innovation with business model, and then have a good practice, and then go to global by the help of everyone, including you, I think that would be a good business for everyone. For example, let me take an example. 10 years ago, we're helping the biggest cement company called Taiwan Cement Corporation. 10 years ago, we helped them to capture the carbon dioxide. As you know, it's inevitable to release the carbon dioxide by making cement. They have to hold the cement up to 1,400 centigrade by coal. So it's no way to reduce the carbon. So we help them to capture the CO2 and then to bring them to feed the algae. And then we extract the algae into a certain ingredient for the cosmetic, for some of the food. So that would be a very good circulation. With Taiwan Cement, I think they have a good investment in Europe, in Africa, and in South America. bring this technology into their global branches. I think that also a good way. But I must say, it's not just Taiwan's technology, our ITRI technology. They also have technology from US, from Europe. When we put everything together, that would be very unique. So that's a second part, circular economy. I would say recently we talk about circular cooperation for a climate crisis. So if we can circulate everything, not just limited in Taiwan island, we can circulate the global market, that would be a great thing. The third part is how to change our lifestyle. That's not that easy to change your lifestyle. If I ask you, can you just buy two shoes, two jacket every year? That's almost impossible. So we've been try to redesign the material, redesign the manufacturing, redesign the circular way. And if we can do that, we can keep our living style, but circulate everything. But one thing I think that Taiwan really need your help is early stage investment. We may have some technology, breakthrough technology, but early stage investment is really, I think would be a very good, like a catalyst to transform the technology into market. So myself, I'm in charge of about 1 billion Taiwan dollars innovation project. I do find we have many good projects with many good ideas, but we need some VC to bring this into the market. If it is possible to bring into the global visibility, I think that's very important because early stage in Taiwan is quite lonely, early stage. So we can, if you, by the help of you, we bring that into the global community, and then everybody will have, like both of you, have this kind of ambitious, have this kind of vision. I think that's very important. If we can transform the people, the VC, early stage, and technology into a realization, that would be a great thing for Taiwan. I think by the help of you, and I believe Taiwan can help to the climate crisis too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peng. So yeah, Xiao, CK, everyone's looking for money, so you're up. Okay, so to bring everything back a little bit full circle. So today, we have the privilege to have Xiao to talk about some of their investments, especially energy storage, something he mentioned. Of course, Shashank is the forefront of the DAC technology. Now, in the storage side, I know in Taiwan, Prologium just raised a major round for a solid-state battery. So that's looking promising. Dr. Peng, can you share with us a little bit, if you have seen anything in the technology side with direct air capture or something interesting in the energy storage sector?
Yeah, I think, let me talk about battery. We've been working battery for almost 30 years. I myself in charge of the battery project too. I found Taiwan's industry are very realistic. They will not invest first and then waiting for the market to come. So, but we do have some very unique technology recently been attracted by some VC. For example, we have a special material, we call it the STOBA. STOBA is a material, for example, if you have a battery, once you have a kind of damage or you have an internal short between anode and cathode, that we call the internal short, that will generate heat and then fire and then explosion. You can see this in many energy storage or the EV. Our material can insulate the internal short while the temperature being heated up to 150 to a very critical temperature. I think this is very unique technology. We just need someone or some company helping us to implement into their factory. I believe that can change the world. Another thing is we have very fast charging battery. Fast charging means that can charge within 3 minutes, 5 minutes, without damaging the battery material. And that can be used for fast charging car, fast charging energy storage system. We are working now to do some kind of demonstration. I think that also a global impact project. And after this, we can circulate. A good thing is that kind of material can extend the service life of battery. For example, normally the battery life would be 5 to 10 years. This can last maybe 15 to 20 years, almost double. So, but it's more expensive. So the thing is that's why I need VC. It's expensive, but in terms of cycle life, how much is 50% saving technology. So you need some business model to bring this into realistic. So I think the battery PV Taiwan have this kind of limitation. If we can encourage most of you, all of you, to look into some innovative technology in Taiwan, and with your help, bring that into the global market, global community, I think that would be beneficial for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Peng. Shuo, I think that's a job offer for you.
Welcome. Okay. Welcome both of you to Taiwan anytime.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peng. We have about 10 more minutes before we wrap. Let me go to the Q&A a little bit. I think there are a couple of questions on the list. Let me take a look. The first one is from Liang Chang. I think this is something that Shashank could help us with. He asked, how do we respond to climate change skeptics citing facts such as carbon dioxide accounts for a very small proportion of the atmosphere, 0.04%, even though humans have increasingly relied on fossil fuel? I think the perspective on CO2, I can't say divided, but there's a lot of information out there, a lot of noises out there. Could you clarify or help us understand a little bit in your perspective, and of course the IPCC's perspective on really the impact of carbon, how much we really need to remove by a certain date in order for us to survive going forward?
Yeah, so, what I've found is, if you're here today, you probably believe in science and you probably understand how, what causes climate change, what causes warming, what causes, rising waters and increasing frequency of floods and hurricanes and so forth. So what I found is that when I do meet folks who fundamentally question climate change, I go about it two ways. One is just fundamentally sort of removing the words global warming or climate change from the equation and just sort of talking from first principles about what is actually happening. So actually, it turns out many people don't understand exactly what causes warming. So what happens is CO2 molecules, CO2 is one of a group of molecules, and apologize if this is a repeat for many of you, but I do think it's important to get into first principles. And CO2 molecules fundamentally when it's released in the atmosphere, they have a heat trapping mechanism. They like to trap the heat. So when the sun shines and radiates heat towards our planet, normally a lot of it radiates back. It radiates back into the atmosphere. If not, our Earth, our planet will be a fireball, right? So a lot of it needs to be radiated back, reflected back. But what happens is in the atmosphere, if you have too many CO2 molecules, those molecules stop that heat from escaping, right? Because CO2 is one of the gases that likes to keep the heat in. And, fundamentally, the planet is very delicate. You used to have 280 ppm, 0.028% of the atmosphere used to be CO2 for the longest time. And, humans came along and put more CO2 in. Now it's up to 0.04%. And it's like, wow, small change. Why would that happen? Well, realize that's actually an increase of something, almost 50% increase in the amount of CO2 molecules right? From 0.028% to 0.04%. It's a 50% increase in the CO2 molecules in the atmosphere. So, no wonder that this delicate balance that the planet is starts messing up. So, I think going to the fundamentals is actually what's happening, is one way to go about it. And the other way to go about it is, okay, talking sort of statistically, would you take a chance, like asking a question, would you take a chance that even if there's a 1% chance that humans were the ones responsible for putting extra CO2 in the atmosphere and causing these extra hurricanes and floods and so forth, would you still stand a chance, 1% chance of, your kids and your grandkids and animals and birds and fishes, would you take 1% chance that there won't be a livable planet for these folks, right? And is that, for me, even if it's 1 or 2% chance, even if there's a small chance that my kids and our grandkids won't have a livable planet and enjoy the planet like we have, I feel like it's a problem worth attacking. Sure, you can say there's a lot of other problems we need to solve, and of course there are, and we need to have as much, a lot of effort going into them as well. So those are two things I would say. I'm sure Shuo has other thoughts on this too.
Yeah, Lawrence, do you mind if I chime in a little bit?
No, of course, please.
I think it's fundamentally the wrong question, right? Like at the end of the day, I think the best our ideas are where it doesn't really matter. I don't care if you believe in climate change or not. I'm looking for technologies where even if you don't give a shit about our world and you don't care about anything, it makes you money, right? Like, let's not deny who we are as human beings. We're miserable, slightly better evolved ape people, and we're just greedy at the end of the day. But now let's turn that greed for good, right? In the example I gave earlier about being interested in energy storage, man, this energy storage can make your cement plant 20% more profitable. It can make your fuel production facility 20% more profitable. And I don't care why you're buying this. If you just want to do this because it's the bottom line, I love it, right? Because it's going to benefit the world and it's going to make your business run smoother. I think those are the ideas that are going to have the highest velocity in the world. We have to aggressively find those kind of ideas and fund them.
That's awesome. Thank you, Shuo. All right. So, one last question to kind of close today's discussion. I think it's a fantastic conclusion to it. I see Shashank has already answered that question, but if I could get everybody's thoughts on this, the question is, could you recommend a source, whether it is a book, a Twitter account, whoever, to learn or follow net zero related topics? Shashank already answered, but if I could just go around and have all of you share a little bit on that. Can we start with you, Shuo?
It's a tough one. Can you start someplace else? I have no idea how to answer that question. I don't know. It's a complicated topic, yeah, and it changes so much, which is I guess I'm struggling to think of like a single good source for it, right? I love the Lower Carbon team, and I love everything that they both write about and they tweet about. So that's one good place to start. They're like ground zero in supporting that fight.
Okay, so Lower Carbon Capital, their Twitter accounts. Okay. Shashank, I know you answered that. If you could share it with us here at the panel too. Shashank, you're on mute.
Yeah. So I think understanding where the emissions come from is a good first place. At the end of the day, there's top 10 areas where emissions come from, and I think the Bill Gates book, Avoiding a Climate Disaster, is a good, accessible read. It talks about not just where the emissions come from, but rather all the emerging technologies that are playing a big part in it. And where and I think he's very well educated, and he's a good, accessible reader, a writer. The other one, as I mentioned, is Drawdown. Drawdown has a very clear, it's like, hey, here's the top 10 things that will have the highest impacts on climate. I don't completely agree with all the stack ranking and some of the things that they missed, but it's still a good, accessible read. The third one I mentioned was Speed and Scale. It's a recent book by John Doerr. who's a big climate tech investor. He was actually a big investor in clean tech back in the early 2000s. Before, this was a hot thing, he invested in. Now he wrote a book talking about the lessons from that time, and also being very clear, methodical about the highest leverage areas to invest in and what technologies are promising. Those are 3 good places to start.
I'll just add, if you're interested specifically in venture and new companies being formed, Climate Tech VC is an excellent resource online that is also chock full of great information. I'll put the link in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Peng, anything to share with us on that front? It could be in Chinese too, if you have read something interesting.
All right. I think many industry in Taiwan said we must live until tomorrow, then go to day after tomorrow. So we do need multiple solutions for this complex problem, for complex world. So I think everyone should put himself into different time zone, different places for different solutions. There's no one single solution to solve everything. But if we can contribute in our part, in our solution, in our space, then by the investment, we can maximize the benefit, market benefit, the value, also benefit the carbon decarbonization. I think that is the basic idea for myself. I sincerely hope that many of you have this global vision, global view, and you can bridge Taiwan, bridge the global, bridge the fund all together. Then we probably will come out with a good solution. So for ITRI, we've been working with like a cement, steel company, fossil company to capture the carbon and then turn it into a basic raw material. That's what I've been doing, but the cost is still too high. Yeah? So we trying to find every way to reduce the cost. To me, many technology are there, but the cost too high. And how can we have some breakthrough scientific way to reduce the cost to make that possible? I think that's really a good challenge for everyone. And I hope we can see each other in face, and then you can visit Taiwan, and then probably will bring you some idea too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peng. So my only job today is to make sure that everyone can get out of here by 11. So I've already failed everyone on that front. So I would like to thank everybody for your time. Thank you, Xiao. Thank you, Shashank. Thank you, Dr. Peng.
Great. Thank you.
If you have any more questions, after this, we'll post a QR code for our line chat room to reach out to us if you like. So please stay for that. Otherwise, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for today's discussion. I hope everyone's learned a lot out of it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. Great moderation, and really appreciate being part of this. It's a privilege to talk to everyone.
Thank you, Xiao.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
for all
Really
the
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.